I don't want to take the step that you're asking me to take. I am not willing to take that step that you're asking me to take because the bottom line is, I really don't believe that you are more powerful than the stench that's going to come from the tomb. What I just said just now is very powerful for some of you who are listening to me, who are waiting for a breakthrough. The whole point of this chapter is for every single person that's over there and for every single person that studies it and meditates on this chapter for thousands of years will recognize the glory of God, and not just recognize the glory of God, but will come to a place of belief. If you have faith as big as a mustard seed, you will tell this mountain to be removed, and it will be removed for you. How often we think that God is not bigger than the stench that I've been hiding in my tomb. Child of God, you know what, man? I love you enough to not sugarcoat this in any way, okay? Because I am desperate for you to have a breakthrough in your life. Because I am desperate for you to see the miracle working God in your life. Because I am desperate to see the glory of God invade your homes. It's okay if I don't hear about it, man. It's okay if this church doesn't get any credit for it. If you don't get a building, it's fine. But this morning, in this moment, I want God to invade your homes. So I'm going to say this to you. Jesus does not mince words. And he says, roll the stone away. As if Jesus does not know that there's going to be a smell. Oftentimes we become the chief reminding officer to Jesus, right? Jesus, let me remind you that I am uneducated. Jesus, let me remind you that I am not very good with money. Well, like Moses, right? Let me remind you that I stutter. Let me remind you that I have lived a promiscuous life. Jesus, let me remind you that I've had multiple marriages. Jesus, let me remind you that I have been a terrible dad. Let me remind you that I've been a terrible worship leader. Let me remind you that I have not been faithful. God, let me remind you that you should not be choosing me. We become God's chief reminding officer, and he does not mince words. And he says, roll the stone. And the sisters say, there's going to be a stink. Look at Jesus' words. Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? I'm going to start jumping and screaming over here, man. I'm going to go all charismatic over here because Jesus does not mince words. He does not say, I know this kind of hard, isn't it? Well, let's talk about this. Mary, why don't you go make me that beautiful stew that you make, and why don't we sit down and let's talk about this. Let's process this. No. Jesus is not going to go soft on you when he wants to reveal his glory in your life. Do you get this? You might have 1,000,001 excuses why you need to have the stone blocking the glory of God in your life, but God is jealous for you to experience his glory. And you can remind him all you want about the stench that's hiding behind that tomb, and you can come up with all the excuses that you want, and Jesus does not mince word, and he says, did I not tell you that if you believed, you will see the glory of God? Now, the sisters wanted him to be there 4 days ago. The sisters wanted him to be there while Lazarus was still breathing his last. Now he's dead and he's rotting. You wanted God to show up when you were 12. You wanted God to show up when you were 18. You wanted God to show up 2 years ago while there was still a glimmer of hope for your marriage, a glimmer of hope for your business, a glimmer of hope for your country, a glimmer of hope for your church, a glimmer of hope for your pastor, but he didn't. And now, you rolled a big stone over it. And this morning he's coming to your living rooms and he says, you're one step away from your miracle. Roll the stone away. And what do? You have your excuses of all the stench. The excuses are all the things that we say to keep the stone in its place. God, if I stepped out in faith and I begin to do this, and you don't show up, because sometimes you kind of do that, I don't want to make you look like a fool, God. So because of that, I'm going to be faithless. Not good enough. Not good enough. Jesus is speaking very clearly in his word. to Martha and Mary. By the way, can I make that clear too? Some of you follow prophets and evangelists to pray over you and to say things, and they move away. Now, it's good for you to get a prophetic word, but please don't be stupid. Please don't be a person who lacks discernment. Every single time someone's waiting on a prophetic word to come through, the first thing I ask them is, have you waited on the Lord? Have you taken this word to the Lord and asked Him to confirm it? Because there are many times people are waiting for water to run dry because they got a word from someone, a traveling preacher, some crazy lunatic, that was not God's word, and you are wasting your life. Please, Church of God, please don't fall trap for such charlatans. He's a God who speaks. You take every word that comes and is spoken over you to God. You fast and pray if you have to. Can I tell you the number of times that people have prophesied over me that's not been from God? And I thank God I didn't listen to them. Because if I listen to them, I'll be living in a tomb with a stone outside, living in my insecurities. You know how many times people gave me words saying that I should not be doing what I'm doing and should not be preaching what I'm preaching and should not be marrying the person that I'm marrying. You know how many people that I respected said tough stuff like that? I had to take it to God. There are people who left the church because I didn't take their word seriously, because it was not from God. In fact, some people have told them, you should be glad you're not in the Old Testament because we'll be stoning you. False prophet. Not every person who speaks in the name of God is speaking in the name of God. Look at His word. He speaks very clearly. He speaks extremely clearly. There will not be any shadow of doubt about it. Sure, your pastor might disagree with you, but don't forget he's just a man. God can get past your pastor and speak to you, child of God, and He will confirm things in His word. Some of you, your theology is so weak because you're too scared to hear from God yourself, and you have your pastor and he's become your God. That should disgust you this morning. That should make you want to cleanse yourself and get out of Lodabar, get out of the cave, and roll that stone and experience the miracle of God. Jesus speaks very clearly, without mincing words, and He says, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Have you lost faith? Have you given up on hope? Have you become just a Christian who's okay with the cliche statements and you just coast along your Christian life? If you are this morning, I pray by the mercy of God that God's creating a hunger in you to experience the glory of God, that you, like Jacob, will say, I'm going to wrestle, I'm going to fight until you bless me.